Kim Woojing was in his first year at Junseo High School, and there he was one of the most respected students, as he was the strongest guy in the entire high school. One day, Kim was walking with his friends, and he decided to show them his strength by hitting a special machine with all his might, on which Kim was able to reach 998 points. Kim's friends were shocked that Kim was able to break the record so easily and achieve almost the maximum number of points per stroke. After testing his strength, Kim invited his friends to walk a little more, but they said that it was time for them to go home, since they all had to go to school tomorrow. As soon as Kim and her friends were getting ready to go home, they noticed how one girl also decided to hit the machine gun. This girl turned out to be so strong that when she hit the machine gun, it simply broke. Kim and her friends could not believe that this simple-looking girl could break this machine gun with one blow. This incident with the machine gun radically changed Kim's opinion that he was the strongest person in the entire school. For the most part, Kim didn't care how much stronger his opponent might be, since he absolutely always won. After some time, Kim began to think that there was simply no one left at school with whom he could match his strength. One day, Kim saw girls perform tricks with bending a spoon. Lee Seoyoung, who broke the machine, also wanted to show how to bend spoons, and after a couple of seconds she showed everyone the spoon twisted into a ball. Kim could not even imagine that in all this time he could have missed such a strong opponent, and he wanted to fight Lee at any cost. However, Kim could not even imagine how it would be better for him to challenge her to a fight. Even though Lee was a girl, Kim was surprised at how she could have such great power. Kim believed that Lee was the strongest person not only in the school, but in the entire area. While Kim was thinking about how he could better challenge Lee, he heard from his classmates that today's gym class would be with the girls and they would be playing dodgeball during the class. Kim thought this would be a great opportunity to beat Lee in class since he was the best dodgeball player. An hour later, a physical education lesson began, in which the students began to divide into teams before playing dodgeball. When the teams were assembled, the teacher sat down on the bench and started playing on the phone, while the students had already started playing. The boys' team threw the ball first, telling the girls' team that they had no intention of giving in and were going to overpower the girls. After that, from the side of the girls, a ball flew into the face of one of the boys with lightning speed, after which this boy sat on the bench of the retired players. Then Kim swung with all his might and threw the ball towards Lee, hoping that he would be able to hit. However, contrary to Kim's expectations, Lee manages to duck to the ground and dodge Kim's throw. During the game, Kim and Lee tried to hit each other throughout the game, thereby accidentally hitting other players. After some time, almost all the players were sitting on the bench of the eliminated players. Meanwhile, Kim and Lee were the only players left on the field. Kim noticed that Lee was already completely exhausted, and he decided to take advantage of this moment and throw the ball at her with all his strength. For the first time in the entire game, Kim manages to hit Lee with the ball, who began to fall to the ground. Kim was incredibly happy that he was able to prove that he was much stronger than Lee. However, instead of falling to the ground, Lee grabbed the ball with both hands, tensed her legs, and was able to stay on the ground after throwing such a force. Kim couldn't believe what was happening, seeing in front of him how Lee was able to resist his throw. At that moment, the bell rang and Kim didn't want his battle with Kim to end so suddenly. Several more lessons passed, and towards evening the lessons ended and the students began to get ready to go home. Kim was not happy with the fact that his battle with Lee today ended in a draw, and he promised himself that next time he would definitely defeat her. At one point, Lee knocked Kim out of his thoughts and suggested that he go home together, since they still live in the same apartment, and she needed to have a serious conversation with him. Kim believed that Lee wanted to fight him again and that this would be a good opportunity to defeat her and become the strongest student in the school again. As a result, Kim agrees to Lee's request to go home together, and for the first half of the road they simply walked in silence. At one point, Kim finally decides to ask Lee what she wanted to talk to him about. Then Lee stopped and asked Kim directly if he liked her. Kim was shocked by what he heard, because he did not understand why Lee suddenly made such a conclusion. Lee said she's noticed Kim staring at her more and more lately, and after the dodgeball incident, her doubts about it only grew stronger. Kim wanted to try to justify all his actions towards Lee, but he couldn't tell her that he wanted to fight her. Then Lee herself suggested that Kim was doing all this just to fight with her. Lee also added that even if he wants to fight with her, he must understand that it is disgusting if he wants to fight with a girl who is much smaller than him, which made Kim feel very ashamed. At that moment, A huge and pumped-up man appeared behind Kim, and when Lee saw him, she said that it was her father who had come. When Kim turned around, he saw in front of him two huge pumped-up men, who were many times larger than himself. Out of fear, Kim stood in a stupor, after which he remembered that he had not said hello, and immediately bowed down in front of the man. After that, the beefy man asked what this guy was doing next to his sister. After that, Kim greeted an even larger and beefier man, who turned out to be Lee's father. Then two pumped-up men surrounded Kim, and asked if he was friends with Lee. Kim could only look at Lee and not understand that she had such a strange family. Father Lee asked Kim why he wears his hair that color when school rules require students to wear their natural hair color. Kim just looked at Lee's father, and told him that it was his personal business what hair color he should wear. Then Brother Lee became very angry and was going to hurt Kim for his disrespectful address to his father. Lee told her brother Hanbil that she repeatedly told him that he should wear a school uniform since no one sees him as a high school student. Hanbil said that even though he is only 14 years old, no one will believe that he is a school but even if he wears a school uniform. Lee's father was very interested in the fact that Kim spoke so boldly to him and his son without any fear, while any other person would faint just by looking at them. Then Father Lee told Kim that despite the fact that Kim was several times smaller than him, he had very great willpower. Lee told her father that Kim was currently one of the leaders at the school. Hearing this, Hanbil and his father laughed loudly at the statement. Lee then told her father and brother that this was the truth, even though he dyed his hair, dressed like a bully and had a very skinny build. Lee added that even with all these qualities of Kim, she still felt sorry for them to laugh at him so openly. While Hanbil and his father continued to laugh loudly at Kim, he began to cry and ran away, shouting to Lee that she was the worst in this situation. After this incident, Lee and his brother and father returned home hungry. Lee's equally pumped-up mother met her with her father and brother, and said that they would have curry for dinner today. When everyone changed clothes and took a shower, the whole family sat down at the table and began to have dinner. While eating, Lee noticed that the food only contained chicken, vegetables and tofu, and that there was no rice at all. In response, the father said that there should be no carbohydrates in their food. While Father Lee was eating his food, he looked at his daughter and noticed that her arms were too thin. Then Hanbil also said that his sister was only skin and bones, to which his mother replied that Lee should have slightly thin arms since she is a girl. After that, Lee's father asked his daughter what her relationship was with the guy they met today. Lee noticed that her father and brother began to laugh again, and she said that he really was the leader of the school. Meanwhile, Kim's older sister wanted to call him to come down to the kitchen and have dinner together. However, when Kim's older sister opened the door to his room, she saw him lying on his bed and crying. Kim's older sister wanted to know why her brother was crying now, because before he didn't cry even in such situations when he was losing some kind of fight, and she thought that it was all because of some girl. Assuming that it was really the girl, Kim's older sister told him that she understood what Kim was going through now, since when she was 17 years old, she also experienced her first failed relationship. Kim raised his head and shouted to his sister to leave his room and sit down to dinner without him. Meanwhile, Lee's father still wanted to know what his daughter's relationship was with that guy, to which she said that they were just studying in the same class. The father said that for the first time he saw his daughter returning home with a guy, from which he concluded that they were in love. Lee denied her father's theory, and said there was nothing like that between them. Then Hanbil invited her to play and asked her who she would save if they were in the water, him or Kim. Then Lee imagined a situation in which her brother and Kim found themselves in the water. Lee knew that if this happened, then her brother would not have any difficulties in such a situation. Lee also believed that if her brother were in such a situation with Kim, then Hanbil would try to get rid of Kim at the first opportunity. Without thinking twice, Lee said that the first thing she would do would be to save Kim Woojung. Hearing this, Hanbil began to tease his sister, telling her that she had fallen in love with this guy. However, Lee's father told his son that if he were in her place, he would also save Kim, after which he told his son to stop talking nonsense and calm down. Meanwhile, Kim went outside after lunch to take out the trash from the house. While Kim was walking down the street, he was thinking about how he could deal with Lee so that rumors would definitely spread about it. At first, Kim thought that it would be enough to tell her about the proposal to hold a fight, but he abruptly changed his mind, considering that this was a bad idea. While Kim was walking down the street, he saw how some thug began to pester one girl. The girl tried to explain as clearly as possible to the drunken and angry thug that they could not be together. The girl said that she was extremely ashamed of the behavior of this thug, who was not the first time offering this girl to meet. Then the girl repeated once again that she would not meet with him under any circumstances, which only angered the thug more. The thug was even more annoyed by the fact that throughout the conversation the girl looked at him as if he were some kind of disgusting. The thug's patience has been completely exhausted, and he decides to use force, since he failed to convince her with words. A moment before the blow, Kim manages to intervene and hit the drunken thug in the face with all his might. This girl and a couple of other girls were surprised at how such a frail guy at first glance not only was not afraid of this thug, but also successfully neutralized him. During the impact, Kim didn't hesitate to call the goon a scumbag for such inappropriate behavior. Kim's blow was so strong that this thug lost consciousness and lay on the ground with a bloody face. However, this blow did not cause Kim any of the positive emotions that he gets in a fight, since the only opponent who could arouse his interest was still Lee. The girl chuckled quietly and said that Kim had once again helped her, and that he still had the same fighting character. Kim turned to face the girl, looked closely at her, and did not understand who she was. Then Kim tried to remember this girl, replaying a bunch of different memories from his life in his head. However, Kim was never able to remember who this girl was and how she knew him. The girl interrupted Kim's thoughts and told him that he had grown a lot since their last meeting, because when they were in elementary school they were about the same height, to which Kim replied that she had also changed a lot, pretending that he recognized her. Taking a closer look at the girl, Kim noticed that she was wearing a sports uniform from the Junseo school, after which he told her that he was also studying there in the 3rd grade and that she could visit him, after which he said that it was time for him to go to one important case. The girl stopped Kim and told him that usually no one goes to important business dressed like this, to which he replied that no one would care what clothes he wears. Then the girl said that if no one cares about his appearance, then this is not such an important meeting. After that, the girl extended her hand to Kim in honor of the first such meeting in so many years. In response, Kim extended his hand and shook the girl's hand, which made them both equally pleased to see each other. The next day, rumors spread throughout the school that Kim had defeated one of the 3rd-year high school students the previous night. Everyone was surprised that in such a short time in high school, Kim had already killed so many people. During one of the breaks, Kim's classmates were surprised by an unexpected visit from one of the school's students. This student turned out to be the same girl whom Kim had helped on the street last night, and she wanted to visit him. The guys knew this girl as Oh Siho, who was the queen of Gangso High School, after which one of the guys pointed her to the place where Kim usually sat. Siho walked up to Kim and handed him his favorite chocolate milk as a token of gratitude for helping her yesterday. Kim took the milk and said that he did it because he was disgusted by the behavior of this guy. Siho asked Kim what he was doing just now, to which he replied that he was just thinking a little. While Kim drank his milk, he looked at Lee and already imagined in his head how he would fight with her. Siho also began to stare at Lee and think that Kim had fallen in love with Lee. At that moment, Lee felt as many as 2 people were already looking at her intently, which only frightened her more. Lee became so nervous about this that she accidentally broke her pen while writing in her notebook. Back in elementary school, Kim became Siho's first real friend. Kim and Siho were such good friends that when they were kids, they developed a special friendly handshake that they always used to greet each other. Many years had passed since that moment, and despite this, Siho still remembered every movement of that handshake. However, Siho was offended that she and Kim stopped communicating with each other so quickly. After class, Siho watched Kim and Lee doing pull-ups together on the horizontal bars. During the exercises, Lee began to imitate Kim for sweating so quickly during pull-ups on the horizontal bar. Kim told Lee that he sweats like that all the time, even when he's not doing weight training, but Lee didn't believe him at all. Then Kim rose above the horizontal bar and asked Lee if she could do the same. Lee was shocked by what she saw, as she had never done this before. Kim only teased Lee more, telling her that even a strong woman like her couldn't do something like that. Lee was so annoyed by Kim's behavior that, out of anger, she simply squeezed the bar in the places where she was holding onto it. Siho just looked at everything that was happening with Kim and Lee and didn't understand how a guy like Kim could like a girl like Lee. The longer Siho looked at Kim and Lee, the more angry she became at what she saw in front of her. Towards evening, Siho went to one of the stores to buy a can of soda. But when Siho was about to take the last can of soda, Lee was next to her, who also wanted to buy herself a soda. The girls recognized each other, and it was clear from their gaze that they were not at all happy about such a meeting. Seho immediately pretended that she was happy to see Lee and said that she often sees her together with Kim. Seho then told Lee that she was willing to give up the last can of soda to Lee if she wanted it so much. Seho's behavior, but she did not argue with her and took the last can of soda. A couple of minutes later, Lee was standing outside the store, drinking her favorite soda, while Seho was slowly sipping a carton of juice. After a minute, Seho finished her juice and asked Lee if she was dating Kim. Lee almost choked when she heard this question and replied that she and Kim had no relationship. Lee also added that she wouldn't date some guy who dyes his hair blonde and tries to act like he's the coolest guy in the whole world. Seho was surprised that despite Lee spending so much time with Kim, she spoke so poorly about him. Dong-sok appeared in front of the girls, the same guy from whom Kim recently protected Seho on the street. He was incredibly angry when Lee mentioned Kim, and he wanted to know where Kim was now. Lee was so frightened that out of fear she accidentally squeezed the can of soda in her hand. Dong-sik got angry at Lee's sudden yelling and told her to shut up, which she did. Seho didn't understand why this guy started appearing next to her so often, and it was starting to piss her off very much. Having looked a little closer, Seho and this guy is the same thug who pestered her last night. Seho asked Dong-sik why he came here, to which he replied that he wanted to take revenge on Kim for breaking his nose yesterday. Then Dong-sik rudely asked Seho where Kim was now, to which she replied that she did not know where Kim was now, and even if she knew, she would never have told him. Then Dong-sok began to threaten Seho with terrible reprisals if she didn't call Kim here right away. Despite such loud and severe threats, Seho completely refused to invite Kim here, which only angered Dong-sik more. At that moment, Lee interrupted Seho's conversation with Dong-sik and began jumping between them, thereby trying to attract attention to herself. Seho was a little surprised by such courage and did not understand what she needed to do in such a situation. Lee, like a little girl, apologized for interfering and politely asked Dong-sik and Seho to stop arguing with each other. Lee said that she knows how irritable Kim can be, but despite all this situation has nothing to do with him, and she suggests that Dong-sik look for him at school tomorrow. However, Dong-sik didn't listen to Lee any further, and he simply grabbed her head. An enraged Dong-sik began shaking Lee and shouting at her that he had to deal with Kim right now. Lee asked Dong-sik to let her go, but he only started shaking her harder. After a few seconds, Dong-sik got tired of holding Lee's head and shaking it, so he let go and hit her on the cheek. After that, Dong-sik grabbed Lee by the hair and told Seho to call Kim here right now if she doesn't want to see him kill Lee. Then Lee began to laugh softly, which made Dong-sik begin to pull her hair even harder. Dong-sik in the stomach with her elbow with all her might, and he let go of her in pain. Lee's blow was so strong that Dong-sik fell to his knees and began screaming in pain. Seho was shocked that Lee was able to neutralize such a big guy like Dong-sik so easily. 10 years ago, Father Lee said that there are many different dangerous things and situations in this world, from harassment to demon attacks. Even though Lee's father is always ready to protect Lee and her little brother, he still has to prepare them for anything so that even alone they can cope with any danger. Hanbyo various attack and self-defense techniques for several years. Dong-sik was about to hit Lee as hard as possible, but she easily dodged his attack. No matter how quickly or aggressively Dong-sik tried to inflict any damage on Lee, she managed to dodge each of his attacks without any problems. Seho just watched Lee and Dong-sik's battles from the sidelines and never ceased to be amazed at how skillfully Lee managed to dodge Dong-sik's blows. A few seconds later, Lee still hit Dong-sik in the face, thereby managing to stop and neutralize him. Dong-sik in the head as hard as possible in order to knock him down as quickly and effectively as possible. The last thing Dong-suk saw when he found himself on the ground was Lee's fist, from the blow of which he immediately lost consciousness. After this, several people appeared at the scene of the fight, and wanted to know what happened here. At that moment, Lee grabbed Seho's hand and they began to run away, as Lee was afraid that passers-by would recognize them by their school uniforms and report what had happened to the school. A couple of minutes later, Lee and Seho left the scene of the fight so quickly that Seho's breathing increased greatly. After a few seconds, Seho caught her breath and asked Lee why she helped her. Seho told Lee that even when she was slapped, she did not run away, but fought back against Dong-sik, without fear that sooner or later even those who might be much stronger than Dong-sik might attack her. Lee recalled a moment from her childhood when, after a long and hard training in self-defense, she wanted to quit and not practice anymore. Then Lee's father turned his daughter's attention to Hanbyul, who, despite his lack of strength, still continued to try his best. Lee's father then told her that if she continued to train as hard as her younger brother, she would be able to protect not only herself, but anyone else around her. Then Lee told Siho that she just helped her in such a difficult situation, and she is not at all afraid if some stronger guys come after her, since she can defeat them as easily as Sunbae. Siho looked at Lee and thought that she was really cool, and she understood why she attracted Kim's attention so much. But even despite this, Siho still considered Lee to be very cool and her number one enemy, against whom she would fight for Kim's attention. After the fight, Dong-suk came to his senses and went up to the roof of one of the buildings with his friend Yang Soo-hyun to smoke and recover. At this time, Yang was taunting Dong-sik because he was first beaten by a first-year high school student, and now he was beaten by a girl. In his defense, Dong-sik told Yang that all this talk about being beaten by a girl was nothing more than a rumor. Then Yang asked Dong-sik if it was true that he was beaten by Kim Woo-jun, who was not afraid to get into a fight with anyone. Dong-sik was very annoyed that his friend decided to mock him at a difficult moment. However, Yang also added that since Kim Woo-jun entered high school, the situation has become more hectic, as this guy had already gotten into fights with some of Yang's friends from other schools. This situation made Yang so angry that he could not concentrate on his studies, and he promised to take revenge on Kim for everything he had done. The next morning, Kim went to school and was met on the way by his friend Young Soo-hyun. Chan said that he was aware of what was going on between Kim and Lee, but Kim himself did not understand what Soo-hyun was talking about. Young then said that he knows that Kim has a crush on Lee So-hyun from his class. Jong said that Kim was looking at Lee too much and that he was too obvious about his interest in her. Jong also said that Kim had repeatedly shown his feelings for Lee through provocative actions. Kim told his friend that it was none of his business, from which Chan concluded that Kim really liked Lee. Kim then said that what he really liked about Lee was that her strength was many times greater than his. Kim also said that he would love to fight Lee, but he would never fight a girl in his life. Kim added that he only compares his strength to Lee's through various low-impact competitions. Chan listened to what Kim was saying and realized that his friend was just an idiot. Meanwhile, Lee and his friend So-hee were discussing what menu would be in the school cafeteria today, and after learning today's menu, they both decide to go to the cafeteria. Once at the buffet, Lee and So-hee were horrified by the fact that there were so many people in the buffet, which made them think that they wouldn't eat today. Dong-suk emerged from the crowd with a chocolate bun and a packet of popcorn, glad that he had so easily managed to grab some food from the buffet. Lee noticed Dong-sik among the crowd, walked up to him and politely asked him to share some food. Dong-sik was afraid that Lee was going to beat him again, and out of fear, he fell to the floor, wet his pants, and gave Lee and So-hee all his food, despite the fact that Lee asked him to share a little of his food as politely as possible. After that, Lee and So-hee ate half a bun each, which didn't make their hunger go away, and So-hee asked Lee what connected her with that guy in the buffet. When the still hungry Lee and So-hee entered the office, they saw Kim sitting in front of them with his legs thrown up on the desk. Kim just had one whole bun, with which he teased the already hungry Lee a little. Lee said that she was very hungry, and Kim told her that he would give her the bun if she fought him and beat him. Lee had no choice, and she was ready for any battle just to satisfy her hunger. However, Kim said that he was not going to fight her, and that he had already thought of what they would compete in. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Yang wanted to find Kim and deal with him as soon as possible, but he couldn't find him. Then Yang asked the girls passing by in which office Kim Woo-jun studied. When Ian found the office he needed and entered it, something small immediately flew towards him. Ian managed to react and catch the object flying at him, and it turned out to be an ordinary table tennis ball. After that, Yang took a closer look at the guy who asked him to return the ball, and he recognized him as the same Kim Woo-jun that Dong-sik told him about. However, Yang still did not understand what Kim and Lee were doing now. Then Kim replied that he and Lee were currently having a table tennis shoe battle. When Kim again asked Ian to return the ball to them, Ian simply took it and squeezed it. Then Yang made the most serious expression on his face, and said that he came here to talk to Kim. But Kim did not take Yang seriously, and took out another tennis ball from his pocket, which he secretly stole from the gym teacher. Ian was very angry at how Kim blatantly ignored his instructions. Then, out of anger, Yang kicked the desks on which Kim and Lee were playing with all his might to the side. After that, Yang took the ball from Kim, threw it out the window and once again asked Kim to come out and talk to him. Then Kim pulled out another ball from his pocket, after which Young hit Kim in the face. At that moment, Lee took out the bag of popcorn that Dong-sik gave her and looked at everything that was happening in front of her. Yang told Kim that he had crossed the threshold to which Yang could continue to tolerate his behavior. However, Kim only laughed at Yang and told him that his punch was nothing special. At that moment, she watched with all interest and attention what was happening now. While some other students tried to take the popcorn from her, Kim invited Yang to fight him here and now, since he was annoying him so much, which only made Yang angrier. The day before, Yang and Dong-sik discussed how Yang was going to deal with Kim. Yang believed that Kim only fights strong guys, and therefore he is unlikely to refuse to fight him. Yang said that he will find Kim and challenge him to a fight tomorrow at school since he has practice exams today. After that, Yen stood up and was about to leave, finally saying that tomorrow he and all his intelligentsia would resolve the issue with him as quietly as possible. Dong-sok looked at everything that was happening between Kim and Yang and was extremely surprised. Dong-sik looked at this and did not understand how Yang himself was making so much noise, while the students looked at Dong-sik and laughed at his appearance. Yang grinned at the fact that the first-year high school student not only wasn't afraid, but even offered to fight him. After this, Yang ordered Kim to come to the wasteland after classes, where their battle would take place. After class, Kim went to the wasteland to fight Yang. However, Kim's way was blocked by Chan, who said that all the students were already talking about their fight today. Chan advised Kim to apologize to Yang and avoid a fight, but Kim no longer listened to him. Leaving the school, Lee and So-hee heard Young telling Kim who Yang really was. Chan told Kim that the most dangerous guys used to study at Junseo High School, and 2 years ago, Yang became the one who dared to fight back all the bullies in the school, after which, Chan also added that it would be better for Kim to retreat, since Yang was able to clear the school of hooligans without any problems and restore order in it. However, Chan's words not only did not convince Kim to give up the fight, but also made him more inclined to fight with Yang. Lee and So-hee started laughing loudly at what they had just heard from Kim. Then Kim noticed Lee and So-hee laughing at him, and invited them to go with him and watch him defeat Yang. Towards evening, Kim came to the vacant lot, where Ian and several other guys were already waiting for him. Kim noticed that besides Yang, several other people came here, and he thought that Yang wanted to outnumber Kim, to which Yang replied that all these people came here as spectators. Having looked closely at several guys, Kim believed that he had already seen these faces somewhere. And then Kim recognized these people as several hooligans he used to know, and he was shocked by what Yang did to them. Yang told Kim that he arrived 3 minutes later than the meeting time he had indicated, for which Yang already wanted to deal with Kim as quickly as possible, since high school graduates always had very little time. Kim asked Yang what he had done with these people, to which Yang replied that he had set them on the right path. Yang also added that after he defeats Kim in battle, he will also guide him on the right path and make him a decent student. Kim immediately interrupted Ian and told him that it was time for them to start fighting, since he himself was worried about his time. Then Yang stood up, took off his glasses and prepared for the battle ahead of him and Kim. Within seconds, Yang and Kim were engaged in a fierce battle against each other. One of the spectators watched the battle and thought that despite the fact that Kim fights decently, he will still become as decent a student as they are. Another viewer said that Kim has a fierce and stern look, and that Kim will lose the battle against Yang today. A third viewer said that she did see Kim as a worthy opponent for Yang, but she also believed that despite his best efforts, there was no way Kim could defeat Yang. At one point in the battle, Kim finally managed to inflict significant damage on Yang's arm. Despite the severe pain, Yang did not give up and tried to continue the battle in this state. Then the audience immediately began to support Kim and ask him to defeat Yang and rid the school of his dictatorial system. In response to this reaction, Yang said that he remembered the faces of everyone who just said this. Then all the spectators fell silent, put on a decent appearance, and continued to silently watch the fight. The moment Kim asked Lee to come with him and watch his fight with Yang, she knew that it would be an interesting spectacle in which the head of the first class fought against the head of the third class. However, Lee had repeatedly heard from other students how skillfully Kim fought, but she had never seen how Kim fought against such serious opponents as Yang. However, in Lee Yang's eyes, she also did not look like some kind of strong and difficult opponent, and so she was doubly curious as to why they were both considered the main ones in the school. So he asked Lee if she would go to watch Kim and Yang fight. to which Lee replied that they were both going to watch their fight. Soo-hee told Lee that she would love to go with her, but she was a little scared. Lee said that it is normal for a person to exhibit deviant behavior in such situations, which confused Soo-hee a little. Then Lee began to persuade Soo-hee to go along, and Seho said that she would also go with them. Seho's sudden appearance, and she said that she had just left school and was also going to go watch Kim and Yang fight, and she began to ask to go with them. Lee and Soo-hee thought that Seho really likes to watch other people fight, but Seho said that she doesn't like it at all when someone fights, and she said with an embarrassed face that she just wanted to watch the fight. Yang looked at Kim and thought that he was much stronger than he expected. Kim also looked at Ian and hoped that he could easily defeat him if he fought with half his strength, but apparently he would have to give his all for an unconditional victory. Then Kim invited Yang to bet that if Yang wins, then Kim will become the same as those spectators whom Yang corrected. But if Kim wins, then Yang will have to come to school in a female school uniform. Yang looked at Kim and thought that he had met himself from the past, after which he accepted such conditions. Kim attacked Yang with the words that for Yang he perceived his punishment as a reward, since he agreed so easily. However, Yang said that he doesn't care at all, and the main thing for him is simply not to lose in this battle. After this, Yang tried to hit Kim with his knee in order to neutralize him as effectively as possible. A few hits later, Kim and Yang stood up again and started talking to each other. Suddenly Yang told Kim that he reminded him very much of him in his youth, and therefore he wanted to guide Kim on the right path even more, but Kim did not understand what Yang was telling him. Ian said that a few years ago he also drank a lot, smoked, fought with other guys, rode around the city on a motorcycle, and he absolutely did not care about anything else. However, one day Ian felt that his lifestyle was making him more and more disgusted with himself every day, and it was then that he realized that it was time for him to change and become more mature. That day, Ian was drinking with his friends on the playground as usual, and his friends began to notice that Ian was becoming something different. One of Ian's friends said that today he almost got into a fight with his younger brother, who was in junior school. This friend said that last night his younger brother asked him to help with his homework, and since everything was easy, he quickly helped him, and the next day the younger brother came home and told him that all his answers were wrong, after which he called him a fool. Then Ian became interested in what problems he had solved, and after looking at the really easy problems, he told his friend that his brother was right, and that he really was a rare idiot. Ian said that in fact all the answers here were wrong, and the friends began to argue with Ian. Ian said that the answer to one of the examples would be 6, to which his friends replied that the correct answer would be 8. Then the friends decided that they should teach Ian a lesson not to stand out when he makes such erroneous conclusions, and then Ian's friends threw a live frog into his beer mug, after which they forced him to completely drink the entire contents of his mug. It was at this moment that Ian realized that if he continued to behave this way, his life would not get better, and then he completely abandoned all his bad habits of the past and his undeveloped social circle. Kim listened to Ian carefully and thought only about what the beer tasted like with a live frog swimming in it. Then Yang told Kim that if he didn't put in his efforts, he wouldn't achieve anything in life, and that Kim had every chance to improve in his first year of study. But Kim was already tired of all this chatter, and he couldn't wait to continue their fight. Yan immediately realized that Kim was unlikely to want to immediately realize everything that he had just told him. Then Yang decided to stop talking and give Kim a couple of serious blows. However, Kim not only managed to dodge Ian's blows, but at the same time deal him a heavy blow to the stomach, from which Ian immediately fell to the ground. Next, Kim was going to trample the prone Ian on the spot, but he manages to dodge such an attack in time. Kim said he realized that Yang had pulled himself together and changed his lifestyle, after which he asked Yang why he didn't just change schools and study there. Yang said that he initially thought about changing schools, but then he thought that he didn't need it when he could fit Junseo into his lifestyle. Yang added that he wanted more to create his own learning atmosphere at school by dealing with all the bullies in the school. Yang also wanted to give all these bullies a second chance to get on the right path with him, as a result of which he beat the crap out of them that was in their heads and forced them to study well enough that each of them could after school to get to university. Meanwhile, Lee tried to see how the fight between Kim and Yang was going. When Seho and Soo-hee wanted to ask Lee what was going on, Lee said that Kim nearly overpowered Yang. Lee, Seho and Soo-hee were unable to enter the wasteland area due to the fact that at all possible passage points there were Yang's reformed bullies, through whom they could not pass. So he said that she and Seho couldn't hang on the wall like Lee, and Seho added that if there was any hole or crack in the wall, they could look at the Adraka. Then Lee came down from the wall and said that she could make a hole in the wall for them. Seho asked Lee how she planned to make a hole in the wall, to which she replied that she would simply break through the wall, which scared Sohee very much, since they could be caught right away. Then Lee prepared to hit the wall, and in less than a second a large hole appeared in the wall. Kim kept hearing from Ian how he gave all these bullies a second chance, and how this educational gesture changed the lives of each bully for the better. Then, in confirmation of Ian's words, the reformed hooligans said that their parents were actually pleased with such changes. To refute Yang's words, Kim told him that Dong-sik recently slapped one of the first-grade students. Yang could not believe what he heard, from which Kim concluded that Yang did not know about this incident. Then Kim decided not to stop, and decided to tell him another incident that happened to him a few days ago. One day, Kim was walking down the hallway and accidentally bumped shoulders with Choi Kyusop-seo, who was in his second year of study. Then, a couple of seconds later, Kyusop-seo hit him in the face with all his might without warning, causing Kim to fall to the floor. Kim understood perfectly well that time Kyusop-seo deliberately ran into conflict and provoked another fight. Then Kim suggested that Yang also did not know about this incident, because if he had known about this situation, he would have immediately started re-educating him. And there were many more such hooligans at Junso's school. Kim told Yang that the two were the type of bullies who pretend to be weak in front of people like Yang and act very differently in front of weak students who are unable to fight back. And Yang doesn't see in them the anger they hold back just in front of him. However, despite Yang's best efforts to re-educate such students, they were still bullies in front of other students. Then Kim wondered whether Yang could allow Yang to not know about such hooligans, since rumors about them were heard from everywhere, or whether he knew about everything and decided to simply allow such behavior from hooligans. However, in any case, Kim found it disgusting that Yang pretended that he was ready to do anything to ensure that the discipline of Junseo's school flourished. At that moment, all those reformed hooligans who were watching the fight suddenly felt ashamed that they had actually behaved like that at school. Kim called Yang a hypocrite and an idiot for only getting rid of bullies who only bother him and for only justifying his behavior as noble deeds. At first, Yang wanted to attack Kim again, but at that moment he was distracted by a loud sound from one of the walls of the wasteland. The reason for this loud sound was that Lee still managed to create a small hole in the wall through which she, Seho, and Sohee could watch the fight. Ian looked away from the conversation and was shocked that some girl could break through a concrete wall so easily. Kim decided to take advantage of his opponent's inattention and hit Yang in the face as hard as possible. During the strike, Kim did not forget to humiliate Ian in every possible way, calling him trash and an idiot. After a few seconds, Yang concentrated on the fight and continued to flinch from Kim's attacks and try to injure him. Meanwhile, the girls watched the fight and were surprised at what kind of punches Kim and Yang were trying to land on each other. Lee drew attention to the fact that Kim is now in a serious condition, and that he is trying to fight back Yang, from which she deduced that Kim was a common masochist. While Kim and Yang were hitting each other, Lee yelled at Kim that he fully lived up to her expectations, that he was a bad fight, after which she called him a yellow-haired anchovy. Yang then stopped hitting Kim again and started making fun of Lee for calling Kim a yellow-haired anchovy. Then Kim decides to take advantage of the right moment again and attack his opponent as soon as possible, but this time Yang manages to block such a powerful blow. Despite his timely defense, Jan still had difficulty standing on his feet after such a move. Then Kim is about to attack Ian as quickly as possible with a high kick to Ian's face, but Ian manages to trip Kim, from which Kim immediately falls to the ground. After Kim fell to the ground, Yang was going to punch Yang in the face as quickly and as hard as possible before Kim could get to his feet. But despite his not very fortunate position, Kim was not at a loss, and when Yang's face was close enough, he kicked him on the head with all his might, even though Yang also managed to punch him in the face. Lee watched the fight with all her interest and thought that she also wanted to join their fight. After such simultaneous blows, both fighters lay on the ground covered in bruises and wounds. However, after just a couple of seconds, Kim held Ian by the hair and mercilessly hit him in the face. Yang wasn't going to let him lose and come to school tomorrow in a girl's uniform. Then Yang also grabbed Kim by the hair and began punching him in the face with all his might. After a few seconds, Kim and Ian were exhausted and they stopped punching each other in the faces. Despite his lack of strength, Kim was not going to stop, and he wanted to continue beating Ian, but suddenly he felt someone grab his clothes. When Kim turned around, he saw the face of Young Si-hyun, who wanted to stop this fight. Chan raised Kim to his feet and told him that he should not have agreed to the fight, to which Kim himself, with all his tenacity, said that even so he was able to defeat him. The girls were surprised how Chan so easily came to the wasteland in order to take the exhausted Kim home to his sister. When Young carried his friend's body out of the wasteland, he noticed the girls and told them that they should go home right now, as this place might be too dangerous for them. Then Lee wanted to know what Chan's condition was now, to which Chan replied that Kim would be fine. Siho approached Young and asked him why he came here, to which Young replied that he was here to pick up Kim before he got more bruises again. From Chan's words, Lee assumed that this was not the first time Kim had fought, and Chan told her that back in middle school, Kim had repeatedly participated in similar fights, and each time Chan looked after Kim. At the time, Lee didn't understand whether Chan was too kind or just a simpleton, to which Chan said that he was just doing what any friend would do in his place. Lee looked at Chan and thought that Kim was surrounded by very good people. The next day, Kim came to school with a bunch of bruises, wounds and bandages, and he told his friends in great detail how his fight with Yang yesterday went, saying about him that it was one of his easiest and most boring fights. Kim also said that since Yang was defeated in yesterday's fight, today he would have to come in a female school uniform, and Kim sat near the window and waited for Yang to come to school. On this day, one of the teachers stood near the entrance through which he let students into the school. The teacher was shocked when he saw Yang approaching the school in a girl's school uniform. The teacher was furious, and he couldn't find the words to describe how furious he was with Ian for coming to school in a girl's uniform. Then Ian also started shouting at the teacher, telling him that he himself was not happy that he had come in a woman's uniform today. At that moment, the director appeared in front of Yang and the teacher, who said that there was nothing wrong with the fact that Yang came today in a female form. All the students went to the window and were surprised that Yang actually came to school in a female uniform. After this, Kim told Lee that he also wants to fight her soon. However, Lee interrupted Kim and said that her father told her not to communicate with him anymore, and this news greatly surprised Kim. Last night, Lee, Siho and Seo-hee were happily discussing the fight between Kim and Yang. At one point, Siho said that it was already late, and that her father would be angry with her for staying out so late. Then Seo-hee also remembered that today she did not warn her mother that she would come home later today, after which Siho and Seo-hee asked Lee if everything would be fine with her when she came home. However, Lee no longer listened to the girls, and she was terrified of what would happen to her when she returned home. Then Lee decided to return home as soon as possible so as not to receive any severe punishment from her parents. However, Lee believed that her parents would definitely pay attention to the fact that she came home so late, and she decided to get home through the window, climbing up the wall of the house several floors. When Lee got home, she thought about how she could best behave so that her parents would believe that she had long since come home. However, Lee noticed that when she successfully got home, her younger brother was standing in front of her. Lee asked Hanbyul if her parents were home, and when Hanbyul replied that her parents were home, she asked her younger brother to help her pretend that she had been home for a long time. Lee didn't even have time to finish speaking when Hanbyul immediately started calling for his father, and Lee had no choice but to hit his brother in the face. A few minutes later, Lee held her hands up as she served her punishment for coming home so late, and for hitting her little brother. Lee kept her arms raised for so long that over time she began to let her arms drop slightly out of fatigue, prompting her father to tell her to straighten her arms. After this, Lee's father scolded her for returning home so late, since her father had repeatedly told her that with the onset of darkness, various monsters began to appear on the street, which could pose some kind of threat to life. Meanwhile, Hanbyul watched with a broken nose as his father scolded his older sister for being disobedient. Her father said that Lee was too young to be walking outside at such a late hour, and that while she lived in this house, she must follow all her father's rules. Then Lee would look at her father with her look of sympathy, so that her father would feel at least a little sorry for her, and tell her to put her hands down. At first, the father realized that now Lee was simply trying to push for pity, but after a few seconds he allowed his daughter to give up. The father told his daughter that from now on she must return home on time, and the younger brother looked at this and did not understand how Lee could get off so easily. Lee was about to get up and go, but her father stopped her and told her that he wanted to ask her why she came home so late. Lee stood up and said that she was just walking outside with Siho and Suhi and watching Kim act like a small and stupid child. Then the father again got angry with his daughter and told her not to communicate with Kim anymore, since because of him Lee could become a bandit like Kim, and he added that if he found out that she was walking with him, then he does not answer himself. Lee did not argue with her father, and she said that she would no longer have any contact with Kim. They explained to Kim that they now had to have fun together without her father finding out. Then Kim asked Lee why she was talking to him, since it would be the end for both of them if her father found out about it. Lee said that they just had to be careful because even though Kim annoyed her a lot, she still thought he was a pretty funny guy and that's why she liked hanging out with him. Kim was very pleased that Lee saw him as a good person and said that he also enjoyed spending time with her. At this time, Yam walked along the corridor towards the class where Kim studies to show him that he came today in a girl's school uniform. Ian felt a deep sense of humiliation and disgust for himself and his actions, which he had never felt as strongly as today. Ian did not deceive himself, and he knew about all the things that the school bullies did, to which he simply turned a blind eye. Yam used to think that in order to teach bullies a lesson and correct their behavior, he could simply use violent methods such as beating them. And Yang still thinks so, but completely reforming these bullies would require a lot of effort, which Yang was too weak for. Yang also thought that during the fight Kim called him a hypocrite, and that Yang could not answer him anything about this and somehow refute his words, since he believed that what Kim told him was the absolute truth. Then Ian came to the conclusion that he must change, well, other people who surround him, and himself in order to become better. And first he needs to focus his attention on preparing for the upcoming exams. When Yang walked into the office where Kim was studying, he saw Kim fooling around with Lee. Yang didn't pay attention to what Kim and Lee were doing, and he said that he came here to show Kim that he, as promised, came to school today in a girl's school uniform. Kim remembered that now Yang would come to him every morning to show him that Yang came in a girl's school uniform, which caused Kim a slight feeling of shame, while Lee looked at Yang's legs and thought that Yang's legs much more beautiful than her legs. Then Kim suggested that Yang no longer come to school in a skirt, and just forget about it, to which Yang said that such sympathy only irritated him more. Yang also said that he would accept and suffer punishment for his hypocrisy with full responsibility, and in turn, Lee was very impressed by Yang's thinking. After that, Ian left the office and said that now he would come here every morning and show that he came in a girl's school uniform. And after a while, Ian received a new nickname, Skirt of Remorse. One day, while Kim and Lee were at school, it started to rain heavily outside. Even though the rain started so suddenly, Kim had an umbrella with him, which his sister told him to take with him, while Lee did not have an umbrella with him. Kim looked at Lee's upset face, and he guessed that she had forgotten her umbrella today. Kim then began to mock Lee for not taking her umbrella, to which Lee threateningly asked how he knew that. Kim just continued to laugh at Lee's unpredictability as his opponent, to which Lee said that Kim was an idiot for considering her his opponent. Then Kim said that he was ready to give her his umbrella if she could defeat him in the next competition. Lee was very angry that Kim couldn't give her an umbrella just like that, and that he once again wanted to fight her. Kim then told her that he was in no way forcing her to participate in the competition, and that she could go home in wet clothes. Such a statement only angered Lee more, and in the end she decides to defeat Kim in a palm fight. In the fight with the palms, the winner is the one who has time to knock down the opponent faster, using palm claps, or if during the attempt to clap one of the players himself loses his balance and falls. However, during the competition, Kim did not even have time to clap, as Lee already managed to knock him down, and as a result, Lee got the opportunity to use an umbrella. While Lee walked home under an umbrella, Kim completely refused to go under the umbrella and was not even in a hurry to return home as quickly as possible so as not to get too wet. Then at one point Lee suggested that Kim stand under the umbrella, since they both would still have to walk in the same direction if he agreed to carry the umbrella instead of her. At first, Kim completely refused to go under the umbrella, but in the end he decided to go under the umbrella with Lee. Lee looked at Kim and thought that despite all her irritability, Kim could also sometimes show some positive emotions. After this, Lee noticed that something was wrong with Kim, and she asked him if his right shoulder was okay. At first, Kim did not understand what exactly Lee meant, and only then did he notice that his shoulder had been caught in the rain and was soaked through. While Kim and Lee were walking down the street under an umbrella, Lee noticed a small sick kitten on the road. When Kim noticed the kitten, he began to really touch him and talk about how cute he is. However, after a second, Kim immediately changed his emotional mood and pretended that he absolutely did not care about this kitten. Lee could not look at how this cute creature was tormented on the street, and then, without a word, she was able to convince Kim to take the kitten with her. In less than a minute, Kim was carrying a small, hungry and helpless kitten in his arms, pretending that he had not said anything about this kitten. Lee became interested in what Kim was going to do with the kitten, to which he replied that he would take him to live with him for a while, after which he would feed him, cure him and release him back onto the street, since he could not leave him because that his sister was allergic to cats. Then Lee asked Kim if he was allergic, and as soon as he wanted to answer, he immediately began to sneeze loudly and frequently, from which Lee concluded that Kim was also allergic to cats. Then Lee offered to leave the kitten with her, promising to take good care of it. At first Kim was a little upset that he wouldn't be able to keep the kitten, but then he thought it would be best for everyone if he gave the kitten to Lee, after which he gave her the kitten and went home. As soon as Lee returned home, she immediately asked her family not to scold her and let her leave the kitten with them for a while. However, Lee's relatives not only did not scold Lee for bringing home a homeless kitten, but even began to be touched by him, and as a result, the whole family unanimously decided to keep the kitten. Then the family immediately began to come up with a name for the kitten, and everyone decided to name the kitten Ronnie Coleman in honor of a professional and outstanding athlete. 2 weeks passed from that moment. Lee got a kitten, and Kim again began to stare at Lee with his terrifying gaze. Lee immediately became furious, and said that she was already tired of the fact that Kim still could not stop looking at her from the very beginning of the school year. However, Kim began questioning Lee about when she would finally return his umbrella to him, since 2 weeks had already passed since she took his umbrella. Then Lee apologized to Kim and invited him to go to her house so that he could collect his umbrella, and from such an offer Kim began to get even angrier, since Lee had to bring him his umbrella herself. Then Lee said that Kim could look at the kitten they picked up that day, and how this kitten managed to grow up during the time he lived at her house. Then Kim's emotional mood immediately changed, and he remembered the kitten that Lee had picked up on that rainy day. After this, Lee was approached by one of her classmates who wanted to know if she had a kitten, and Lee wanted to explain to her classmate how she got a kitten. However, the classmate no longer listened to Lee and believed that she wanted to invite Kim to her home in order to engage in some various indecencies. This classmate was so deep in thought that he didn't even have time to react when Lee hit him in the stomach with all her might for starting to imagine various bad things. While the classmate was lying on the floor in serious condition, Lee told Kim that this kitten had grown up very quickly during the time he lived with her due to the fact that this kitten eats very well and eats a lot. After class, Kim went with Lee to her house so that Kim could look at the kitten and get his umbrella back. Once at home, Lee told Kim that while she was changing clothes, he could play with Roni. Then Kim thought that if you called the kitten by name, he would definitely come running to him, after which he quietly called Roni to him. However, when Roni ran to Kim, Kim saw in front of him not a small and emaciated kitten, but a large and creepy cat, in comparison with which any dog could seem like a harmless puppy. Kim was very surprised and at the same time confused by how in 2 weeks the kitten in this family had changed so much. When the Lee family adopted the kitten, everyone immediately began feeding it special cat food. Then Hanbyul proposed to everyone the idea of adding special nutritional supplements to cat food for muscle growth, and all family members approved of this option of feeding the kitten, which is why such a small kitten turned into a mountain of muscles in a matter of days. It was at that moment that Kim realized what Lee was telling him when she told him how much the kitten had grown. At that moment, Kim heard someone outside opening the apartment door, and then Kim thought that if one of Lee's relatives saw him here, he would be finished. In a panic, Kim began to think about where it would be better for him to hide, since no one had found him. Hanbyul, who had just returned home from school, entered the apartment. Then Kim, in a panic, decides to simply hide his face under his shirt, hoping that Hanbyul won't recognize him. However, Hanbyul immediately recognized the same yellow-haired anchovy that he saw with Lee, and after that he wanted to finish off Kim, but Kim manages to dodge in time. Even though Kim was able to dodge, he was unable to return to his normal position, causing him to grab onto Hanbyul's beard to avoid falling to the floor. Lee heard loud screams and quickly found out what happened. However, When Lee walked out into the hallway, she saw her little brother and Kim in a somewhat awkward position. Then Lee didn't understand, since when Hanbyul and Kim had such a close relationship, and Kim and Hanbyul tried to explain to Lee that this was not what she was thinking about now. At that moment, someone else was heard opening the apartment door, and the father had already entered the apartment. When the father entered the apartment, he saw a yellow-haired anchovy lying on the floor under Hanbyul. Then the father was furious with what he saw, and everyone around understood that most likely this would not end well. Immediately after my mother entered the apartment, and hit my father on the head for swearing in front of the children. Then the father calmed down a little and asked Lee, who herself did not fully understand what was happening here, why Kim was at their house. Then Li said that now she also doesn't understand anything what's going on here, and this scared Kim a little, that she couldn't really explain anything, and he decides to try to explain everything to her father on his own. After a short explanation, Father Lee concluded that Kim had broken into their house to look at the kitten. Kim said that he did not do anything strange in their house, after which he planned to leave their house. However, before Kim left the apartment, Lee's mother suggested that he first eat a little before Kim went home, and neither Kim nor Lee's father liked this outcome. Then Kim tried to explain as politely and clearly as possible that there would be no need to cook food for him either, and Father Lee supported Kim's words, hoping that he would leave the apartment as quickly as possible. Kim also added that his older sister is waiting for him at home, who is probably already worried that her brother has not returned home for so long. As a result, after several unsuccessful attempts to leave the house as quickly as possible, Kim still had to stay for a family dinner. Then Lee asked Kim why he still stayed for the family dinner, to which Kim said that it would be somehow indecent when he was shown hospitality, and he refused. Meanwhile, the father was thinking about why Kim didn't immediately leave their house, to which Kim replied that he was pretty tired of being bullied. The atmosphere of the family feast became so tense and restless that Lee began to have trouble breathing. A few minutes later, Lee's mother served everyone dinner, which contained a lot of protein and did not look very appetizing, and at that moment Kim realized that it would be better for him to leave this house immediately. While eating, Father Lee asked Kim what his name was, since he still didn't know his real name, and Kim introduced himself to Father Lee as Kim Woojun to himself, and said that despite his appearance, he had a very masculine name. Kim then corrected Father Lee and said that he was Kim Woojun, to which the father said that there was no difference, and Kim said that both options were not only wrong, but equally terrible. Then Father Lee became angry because he did not understand how to address Kim. During the conversation, Hanbyul threw a chicken breast towards Kim, which immediately ended up in Kim's mouth. Lee immediately began to scold her little brother because she had already told him many times not to throw food. At this moment, Kim and Lee's father looked at each other and thought that they both did not like each other.